You ever been there? You're cramming for a test or maybe just super focused on a project, and then, bam, you hit a wall. That feeling of mental fatigue, right? Where your brain just feels like it's slowing down. For years, we thought we knew why that happens, but it turns out it might not be about your brain running out of fuel. It's more like a rush hour traffic jam happening right between your ears. So let's get into it. This is the big question, right? Why does the very act of thinking hard sometimes make our brains, well, worse at thinking? The answer, it turns out, takes us deep, deep down into the tiny machinery that powers every single thought you have. To really get this, you need to picture the communication between your brain cells, your neurons, as this giant, complicated logistics operation. Seriously. Every neuron has a shipping and receiving department, and the real heart of the operation is what's called the synaptic loading dock. That's where all the action is. Okay, so in this whole operation, the cargo is information, and that information is packed into these little things called neurotransmitters. The delivery trucks carrying those packages, those are the synaptic vesicles. They're absolutely essential for getting a message from one neuron over to the next one. And where do these little delivery trucks drop off their packages? Right here, at the active zone. Think of this as this super high-tech specialized loading dock right on the edge of the neuron, built for one thing: sending signals across the gap to the next cell in line. The whole system really boils down to two key moves. First, you've got exocytosis. That's the moment the truck, the vesicle, fuses with the loading dock and drops off its package. But then, and this is just as important, you have endocytosis. That's the cleanup crew swooping in to clear away the used packaging so the dock stays open for business. So, on a normal day in the brain, when things are pretty low-key, this system is beautiful. It's so efficient. A vesicle docks, releases its stuff, and the cleanup crew instantly clears the mess. The dock is immediately ready for the next delivery. It's just this smooth, constant flow of information. Okay, so if the system is so slick, what's happening when we hit that mental wall? Well, for decades, the main theory was something you could call the empty warehouse problem. And this wasn't just some fringe idea, It was the dominant theory in neuroscience for a really long time. As this review in the journal Neuron puts it, the whole concept of vesicle pool depletion was pretty much the go-to explanation for why our neural signals start to fade. The idea itself was pretty simple. When you're thinking really hard, the neuron's warehouse of ready-to-go delivery trucks, all those synaptic vesicles, just runs empty. No more vesicles, no more messages. It's a classic supply problem. But what if the problem wasn't the supply at all? And this is where the story gets really good. A huge study by Hosoi and his colleagues decided to look closer, not at the warehouse, but right there at the loading dock itself. And what they found was a crucial clue that basically changed everything. They realized the warehouse wasn't empty, not even close. There were tons of vesicles ready to go. The real problem was a massive bottleneck, a gridlock happening right at the point of delivery. And here is the killer detail they measured. Under normal, low-frequency brain activity, that cleanup crew, endocytosis, is super fast. But during high-frequency firing, the kind that happens when you're intensely focused, that exact same cleanup process gets slower and slower and slower. The crew just can't keep up with the demand. This discovery led to a completely new theory of mental fatigue, one that looks a lot less like an empty warehouse and a whole lot more like a crazy holiday shipping nightmare. So let's just put this side by side because this is the absolute key. The old theory said it's a supply problem, no more trucks. The new theory says, nope, it's a logistics problem. The loading dock is so jammed with used, fused vesicle parts that new trucks can't even get in to make their deliveries. And to get a sense of the scale of this mess, just think about this number. In one short, intense burst of activity, a single neuron can try to send about 2,500 synaptic vesicles. I mean, just imagine 2,500 delivery trucks all trying to pull up to the same few loading docks at the exact same time. It's total chaos. So what's the result of all that chaos? The loading dock itself, the active zone, gets buried. The sheer amount of leftover vesicle membrane can actually make the surface of the dock swell by over 50%. It's literally a pileup of used packaging blocking everything. The researchers who wrote about this put it perfectly. They said this high-intensity release isn't some gentle ripple. It's more like a tsunami slamming into the cell membrane. So what does this all mean? Why does this traffic jam matter so much? Well, understanding it forces us to basically rethink some of the fundamental rules about how our brains work when they're under pressure. So here's kind of the new rulebook.
First, the ultimate speed limit for your brain isn't how many vesicles you have, it's how fast you can clean up after them. The bottleneck is actual physical space, and until that space is cleared, new vesicles are stuck in traffic, which scientists call delayed recruitment.
So the next time you feel that mental burnout, remember this. The most important thing isn't that your brain is out of ideas. It's just that the loading docks for those ideas are temporarily jammed. The real bottleneck isn't restocking the warehouse, it's clearing the loading dock. And this isn't just a small little tweak in our understanding. As the review said, these findings are a really big deal. They're forcing neuroscientists to abandon long-standing assumptions about how our brains cope when we really push them to their limits. And it just leaves you with this incredible question, doesn't it? If our brains are limited not by their fuel supply, but by simple logistics, by traffic jams, what other hidden bottlenecks are lurking in our biology, setting the real limits on our own peak performance?